Your friend in shock at the other side of the table. Everyone avoids making eye contact. Silence fills the air. His PC, lifeless on the floor. And you just pull the trigger. What do? Welcome to Creative Contraband.
Welcome to How to Be a Better DM, the show that helps dungeon masters tell better stories and run more engaging games. This is Creative Contraband, where we take ideas from elsewhere and smuggle them into our craft to take it one step further. And remember, all of this is brought to you by Session Zero Studios.
Hi, fellow GMs and DMs! Welcome to the final third of this experiment called Creative Contraband. It's been quite a ride, and I am very humbled at the reception you have had to my work. After 8 full episodes, I am once again here to be your guide. My name is Daniel, you can call me Danny, and I have been a semi-professional artist for about a decade now. I have worked in magic, theater, and music, so hopefully that experience helps me share something valuable with you. Have you ever watched the James Bond movies where the main character is unkillable? Or the Mission Impossible movies with the undamageable Ethan Hunt? Or the unexpected victory of Rey over Kylo Ren in Star Wars 7, despite having everything against her? Well, all of those have a reason to be, but it can be annoying. An invincible hero is obviously going to win, and it might be happening at your table too. And maybe it is playing against the storytelling a little bit. Before we get into the topic though, a small disclaimer. I come from a very particular place, stylistically speaking. I have been an artist for way longer than I have been a GM, hence why I try to help you grow in a very specific direction. If your DMing style doesn't align with what I expect from a DM, or with what I say, that's perfectly fine. And I hope you can teach me a bit about your experience in the comments or the Discord. For me, this is an art form, and as such it reaches its peak when we have something to say. And I am not talking about some grandiloquent narrative or a complex story. You can turn simple stories into emotive, thoughtful ones with intention, even while having a good laugh. You don't need to run a perfect game to run a meaningful one. At the end of the day, that's what we are looking for. Creating meaningful experiences that will live as long as possible in our players' minds. Okay, so I am going to disclose the tips one by one and then justify them with the theory, instead of starting with the theory and then throw all the tips together. If you like this structure more than the other one, please let me know in the comments. Number 1, don't let the plot armor trap kill your stakes. Plot armor, in case you didn't know or hadn't heard about it, is a narrative device where the main characters are quote-unquote protected, because the story ends if they die. It is very useful, and it goes back to very renowned old saga authors like Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes, for example, but it is so overused too, I would say. I mean, look at freaking Harry Potter! That kid is invincible. And the problem is, if your character is invincible, then what is there at stake? It can be an instant tension killer. There are ways to use it and overcome its issues, but the fastest and easiest way to do it is to use it sparingly. Plot armor, just as armor, is supposed to protect the characters, but not make them invincible. And Game of Thrones is an excellent example of this. One of the things that keeps you on edge the whole time while watching the series is that no character is invincible. That keeps the stakes high and won't let the players get cocky with combats or encounters. Their lives are at play, and the fate of their world can also be at play. Number 2, let your players feel the danger. We talked about Harry Potter. Now let's talk about Frodo. Unlike Harry, Frodo is almost always endangered, and you can feel it. No phoenix comes to the rescue, no explosion survived with only a small cut on the cheek. He gets stabbed, he goes catatonic, he's poisoned, he becomes a threat himself, he loses hope. So you know the stakes are high because you can feel it. It's hard to say the same about the first 3 or 4 Harry Potter books, as fun as they can be. Telegraph the danger. Constantly, let your players feel it. Let them see a beloved NPC die. Let them go to 0 HP. Let them be responsible for their own actions. Number 3, make arcs matter. Okay, before anything, I need to say that I am all for open, transparent, and constant communication on the table. If you're going to make a big choice like killing off a PC, you should always talk about it with your player first. Okay, sometimes it's okay to say goodbye to a character, even if it's a PC. Sometimes it's okay to kill off characters. Arcs are called that way because they are not a straight line. They have a beginning and an end. And sometimes the best thing to do is to let the PC sail to the horizon and make a new one. PCs evolving forever can get tricky, so consider it an option. You can analyze the ending of each character of the Fellowship of the Ring at the end of the Return of the King, for example, and find that this is actually what happens. Bilbo understood the importance of the finitude of arcs. Gandalf, Frodo, Sam, they all follow their different paths far away from the initial party. And if you use the case framework, campaign, orc, session, encounter, we have talked a lot about it, it will be way easier to know when to prepare for the departure of a character, who might choose to build a family instead of more adventures or something along the lines. Finally, number 4, treat the story as its own entity. Now, what do I mean by this? Some writers plan their endings from the beginning, and others, like Stephen King, from some point on, they let the characters make their own decisions, quote unquote, and let the story move forward. This makes the ending less predictable and sometimes worse when we are talking about books, but it also makes the characters feel more believable and coherent. What I want you to take away from this is that forcing stuff in your story can damage its quality. If you force a resurrection on a PC via Deus Ex Machina, it might give the players the feeling of, okay, we're cheating, this shouldn't be possible. If the PC shouldn't die, find other ways to make that work, like additional quests to resurrect them or something, but forcing it right away will leave a bitter taste. Try to think of those series that went longer than needed and started falling off with forced plots and storylines. How I Met Your Mother, Money Heist, The Office, even Game of Thrones itself, The Walking Dead, Lost, The Witcher, New Girl, The Fairly Odd Parents. There are just way too many examples. The Office, the US version, has many forced storylines near the end, spoilers ahead. The writers tried to make Jim cheat on Pam, and John Krasinski himself refused to, so it didn't happen. After Michael Scott leaves, the amount of weird stages that Andy goes through is so over the top. Michael Scott works very well as a character because, among many other things, it was so naturally wacky that he could always keep the stakes high without being repetitive and without it feeling forced. Maybe with the exception of the episode of the insurance guy that Michael thinks is a member of the mob, but sure. So, 4 tips. Number 1, don't let the plot armor kill your stakes. Number 2, let your players feel the danger. Number 3, make arcs matter. And number 4, treat the story as its own entity. Let things flow. Today we have a very interesting question from Local Changeling. Thank you for your question, local changeling. It reads, "Hi Danny, I was listening to your episode about endings and last impressions, and you say that the important moments and resolutions should always be handled by DMs, because we know how to make the moment more impactful. How can you explain then that Matt Mercer, being one of the best in the world, gives the player that moment by asking, 'How do you want to do this?'" Okay, great question, and a tough one. Yes, handling the important moment to the player is a valid and maybe desirable option, especially because in these particular situations, it's actually the players who are doing stuff, actions. That's why Matt asks, "How do you want to do this?" But if you watch the recordings carefully, you'll notice that every time after the player decides how to do the thing, Matt then describes the whole scene again in more detail if needed. That is very clear in Campaign 1 episode 34 when they take care of each of the Briarwoods, even more so in Sila's case, because at that moment it's Marisha herself who asks him to narrate the moment. And then Laura acknowledges that is way cooler than what you just said. And until today, Matt still does it. In Campaign 3 episode 91, when FCG does what he does, spoiler alert, Matt uses the same structure. Ritualistic question, player description, DM description. Matt Mercer is probably very aware that he can enhance the moment by taking the building blocks the players give him and turn them into a sick building. At the end of each episode, I will leave you with a word or quote that you might know or not, but that I think can help you level up your game as a narrator. Today's quote is from the movie Cinema Paradiso. It's quite famous actually, and kind of a different one because it's not philosophical or anything. It just hits the emotion right at the core and makes you think. It goes, "Don't come back. Don't give in to nostalgia. Forget us all." If you learned something new, please follow us on Instagram at HowToBeABetterDM podcast and at GameMaster.Huff. And join the Discord, you can find it in the description below, where we have many interesting conversations that inspire this podcast. Before I say goodbye, I want to thank you all for staying until the end. I want you to know that I deeply appreciate it. We have lots of interesting stuff in the oven, including, but way beyond, the video podcasts, so stay in touch. And remember, there are lessons in every art form, and I want to bring them all to your sessions. So thanks again, and remember to tune into Thursday's handcrafted episode. We'll see each other next week. Let's roll to see who attacks first.
This is Creative Contraband, brought to you by Session Zero Studios.